The headline reads, Trump faces the limits of U.S. firepower and the lessons of past wars. In the past weeks, President Donald Trump has clung to a single idea about the conflict with Iran, that repeated, intense strikes would eventually force Iranian leaders to negotiate. He told Fox News that the United States would knock out all power plants and bridges unless the Iranians came to the table. They have no choice, he said, repeating a promise that echoes earlier years of U.S. military engagement abroad. The war in the Middle East is still only 5 months old, but the conversation is already moving past the battlefield. The United States launched a 38-day campaign that began on February 28, and it began with a series of Israeli strikes that killed Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, Iran's chief religious leader, and key military commanders in a compound in Tehran. The Pentagon reports that in the weeks that followed, the U.S. military reached roughly 13,000 targets. It struck hard at the Navy and Air Force, degraded missile and drone arsenals, and killed around 40 high-level military and intelligence personnel. What critics point out is that, despite these massive losses, Iran still retains enough capability to threaten its neighbors with missile and drone attacks. The United States additionally could not prevent further tensions around the strategic Strait of Hormuz, a critical waterway that remains a vital shipping lane for global oil traffic. The situation has become a mirror for a decades-long debate within the Pentagon, the War Department, and the White House. Early in the Iraq and Afghanistan wars, a new doctrine emerged after the 1991 Persian Gulf War, one that promised that precision strikes on multiple fronts could paralyze an enemy and secure a swift, low-casualty victory. That hope yielded early, seemingly efficient results, but the wars dragged on. By 2007, U.S. military thought began to shift toward counterinsurgency principles, summarized by the Army's doctrine. It argued that sometimes, the more force is used, the less effective it is, and that sometimes doing nothing is the best reaction. These new ideas were grounded in the institutional experience that overuse of firepower merely inflames conflict. President Trump's insistence on relentless force mirrors the earlier doctrine, and the war's progress shows that even the most intense bombardment fails to wipe out Iran's attack potential. The ceasefire that kicked off on April 8 was meant to bring an end to the war, reopen the Strait of Hormuz, and assure that Iran could never build a nuclear weapon. Instead, it collapsed just a month later, and hostilities have been reignited. In the same period, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth said the U.S. military used the break in attacks to identify Iranian vulnerabilities, preparing the next phase of strikes. His comments underline a key point: even a pause can provide intelligence that may decide the future of the conflict. Thus, the war versus the United States has fought on the battlefield. Trump holds fast to the idea that intense, hard-hitting firepower will ultimately compel Iran to negotiate, but history in Iraq and Afghanistan shows that just as firepower can win a battle, it can also cement a deeper conflict. As the war with Iran continues, the U.S. must confront the hard question: is the doctrine of relentless firepower still the best path toward a lasting peace? Thank you for listening. Stay tuned for more updates on this unfolding conflict, and let's keep the conversation going.